Today, let's think about your workplace a little differently. What if it wasn't just an office, but a fortress? Every good fortress needs solid defenses to protect everything valuable inside. The big question is, how do you build them? Well, let's get started and lay that first stone.
But before we start building, we have to ask a really important question. Are there any cracks in your foundation? See, here's the thing. Every single organization, I don't care how big or successful it is, has these hidden weak spots. They're like these tiny cracks that, if you just ignore them, can end up bringing the whole structure down. So our job today is to help you find them and, more importantly, fix them.
So here's our game plan, our blueprint for this whole project. We're going to kick things off by figuring out what workplace risk actually is. Then we'll talk about your first line of defense. After that, we'll dive into the risks you find inside the workplace. We'll also cover protecting pensions and trust, a huge one. Then the hidden cost of absence. And finally, we'll step back and look at what it takes to build a truly resilient workplace. All right, first things first. You can't build a defense if you don't know what you're defending against, right? So let's get into identifying those weak spots. What's really interesting here is just how broad the idea of risk actually is. We're not just talking about someone slipping on a wet floor. Nope. Workplace risk covers everything from safety to compliance to your financial stability and even your team's productivity. Think about it. If your team can't get the job done, that's a massive threat to the survival of the whole operation. It's like you're fighting a battle on multiple fronts all at once. Okay, so we know the threats. Where do we even begin? Well, you start right at the beginning, at the front gate. Your absolute first line of defense is all about being careful about who you let inside those walls to begin with. Girding that gate really boils down to this super simple but really powerful three-step process. First up, you've got to identify the right people for the job. Step two, you verify everything, their background, their credentials, to make sure they're who they say they are. And only after you've done that can you really secure your organization with a team you know you can trust. It's the most basic security protocol, but it's so important. And this quote just nails it, doesn't it? The source material calls this the first line of defense. And they're not kidding. Think about it. If that first line breaks, every single other defense you've put in place is suddenly under way more pressure. All right, so let's say the gates are secure. Our focus has to shift inward now. What about all the potential risks that are already inside the walls? It's time to lock down the interior of our fortress. So the most obvious one, the one we all think of first, is safety. And this is so much more than just having some policies written down in a binder on a shelf. It's about actively managing real physical and environmental dangers. And here's the key takeaway. Keeping your team safe isn't just a box-ticking exercise, it is the absolute foundation of a healthy, functioning workplace. Next on the list is compliance. You can think of this as the law of the land inside your fortress. It means you've got to stick to all the outside regulations and your own internal rules. And ignoring this stuff, that's not really an option. The legal hot water and the massive fines that can come your way, they're like battering rams just waiting to smash down your financial walls. And of course, we absolutely cannot forget about well-being. Look, the strength of any fortress comes down to the morale of the people defending it, right? So supporting your employees' health and morale isn't just a nice to have. It's a strategic must-do if you want a productive, stable, and truly resilient team. Okay, let's move on to one of the most precious parts of your fortress, the treasury. Here, we're talking about protecting pensions. And this is a big one because it's tied directly to not only the company's financial health, but also to the level of trust your employees have in you. And the difference here is just night and day. It couldn't be clearer. On one hand, if you manage pensions poorly, you get financial chaos. But maybe even worse, you completely break that core promise you made to your people about their future. But on the other hand, if you manage it well, you're not just securing the finances, you're building up the loyalty and trust that is basically the glue holding your entire team together. All right, let's shift gears to a risk that, honestly, gets overlooked way too often: workplace absence. This is so much more than just a little inconvenience. When someone's not there, it's like a hole just opened up in your defensive line, and that gap comes with very real, often hidden costs. This visual just lays it all out, doesn't it? Over here, you've got your potential productivity. This is what your team could be doing if everyone was there firing on all cylinders. And then, over here is what actually happens when absence isn't managed properly. That gap between the two, that's lost work, that's extra costs, and that's a whole lot of extra pressure on the rest of the team. Closing that gap is absolutely critical. So, let's recap. We've guarded the gate,
We've secured the inside, protected the treasury, and looked after our people. So after all that work, what do we end up with? We get what we've been aiming for, a truly fortified, genuinely resilient workplace. And it really all comes down to these three key things. When you manage risk the right way, your workplace becomes fundamentally safer, just safer for everybody. It also becomes way more resilient, able to bounce back from those curveballs life throws at you. And finally, all of this makes it more sustainable, setting you up for success in the long run. I mean, that's the whole point, right? And that brings us right back where we started, with you. Now that you've seen the blueprint, I want you to take a second and really look at your own workplace. Put on that Fortress Commander hat for a minute and ask yourself a simple question. How strong are your walls?